Hello, everyone who's here and wherever you are in the world. So I'm Jon Chase, and I've been working on open access training workshops for science communication practitioners. Now, it's been my pleasure in almost the last 2 years to work with a consortium of wonderful people. I got to meet people that are doing some amazing work, and for me, it was an absolute pleasure and totally different for me. I've been a practitioner for almost 15 years. And I've seen science communication from a particular perspective, from the UK perspective. And there's a lot going on. And I think naively in my head, I'd never really thought about what it's like for the rest of the world. And when I got to enter a project like this, well, I really got an opportunity to really look into some of that. And so my particular role for Leiden University's input was to develop a set of training workshops. Now, the difference is that you've got the formal side of science communication training, and that happens in academic, and we've got that covered in a module at Trinity College Dublin. I've done an amazing job on. But I've been working at the non-formal training, the type of training that most people don't get. As part of some of the diary study results that I've looked at, most people have not done formal training in science communication. So most of the people doing science communication don't have degrees, didn't get it through academic means. So the importance of having a non-formal training set of workshops is really high, especially on a global level. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about those workshops and give you a little opportunity to ask me some questions about the workshops, anything you may wonder. So Leiden's role, what I did is I looked at the initial call for the GlobalSCAPE project, and I extracted the main things that they were asking me to provide for this workshop. It said they have to increase knowledge about science communication for science communication professionals at international, EU, and member state levels. Also to provide evidence-based insights that are relevant to a range of science communication stakeholders and actors. Now, just to mention, this is a huge task in itself, a range of stakeholders. In science communication, you're meant to be targeted, but we're trying to provide something for a range of stakeholders. So immediately I have to think, what could be versatile enough to be used by a range of different science communicators? And then we had to also raise awareness of the wider field of global science communication. At which point I had to ask myself, what is global science communication? Is it a thing? It also mentioned global relevance. And I asked the question, what is globally relevant science communication? You don't really find it anywhere. Okay, and I'd ask you to think about it as well. What do you think it is when I say it? Everyone will have their own ideas of it. So I had to do a deep dive and work out what would be the best way to convey this in workshops. And so I came up with 2 modules. I looked into that idea of 4 modules, in fact. And in the end, after looking at them quite a lot, I realized that to really be evidence-based, I couldn't do 2 of them and give them justice. Because to be evidence-based, there needs to be the evidence there. And people have to go out and be researching it. And often it just isn't there. There's a lot of theory, a lot of research, but a lot of that research isn't really put into practice, or it's put into practice in one specific situation, or maybe a couple, but to see how that would affect the globe, nobody knows. And so I had to try and grapple with some of these things. So the first module is global relevance in science communication. And it's pretty much doing what it says. Now, this workshop explores how science communicators can practice their work in a globally relevant way that acknowledges and reflects the efforts of science communicators across the globe, as well as the diverse audiences and institutions they work with. And just taking one example, when Samir spoke earlier, I'm sure you'll all agree, the stuff they were doing was amazing. Did the rest of the world know about it? In a country of 1.3 or more billion people, that's like more than 1/7 of the world. That influence is not felt around the rest of the world. And it seems like a lot of the research and ideas are coming from the West to the rest. And we need it to come from the rest back to the West. This is the major thing that we're trying to achieve with GlobalSCAPE and that I'd hope to do with these workshops. Now, I'm actually running these workshops this month. Just to try them out, see how they feel, I put out calls for registration. I chose 4 different time zones to be as inclusive as I could. If we're trying to be truly global in GlobalSCAPE, I can't just offer them in one time zone. That wouldn't be inclusive at all. So I went for 4 time zones, and I was prepared to put in the work because a lot of this is putting in the work yourself. And you can see here, these are the different time zones. And now we opened it 2 weeks ago for registrations. We closed it on Tuesday. Well, I did. At 950 registrations. which basically means that there's a lot of people who's interested in this around the world. And these are people from all over the world. And these, like 93%, were not touched by the previous GlobalSCAPE studies or workshops. So it's a whole different audience. And so there's a clear need for this. Now, whether they all turn up, because it's a free workshop, is a different thing. But the point is, it's a really important thing that's happening. So these are the time zones. Sorry you can't join now, but these are open access resources. You can obtain them at a later date. So to give a little idea about what this particular workshop is about, the goal is for science communicators to develop, and when I say a goal, it's more like a vision, okay, an overall vision. So it's for science communicators to develop and incorporate a global perspective within their science communication practices, to increase the applicability of science communication to a wider range of global contexts. And what I mean is that something might work in the UK, it might work in Europe, but we are not certain if that will work at other places in the world. And we need to test it, we need to try it. And the same the other way around. For example, Samir's wonderful idea of using a bike with 26 experiments on it. I'm pretty sure other people may have come up with that idea before, but no one's hearing about it. So we need to celebrate these different contexts, why these contexts were needed, and look at other places where those contexts also apply. So we can share that knowledge amongst them. And we saw one of our Egyptian colleagues said, that would work wonderfully in my country. And the point is there's so many places where this would work, but we need to spread the word. We need to be able to make these globally relevant. So what I cover in this module is global comparisons of science communication. So how do you compare science communication between different nations? The field, the research and the practice. Science communication across national borders. So how can science communication go from one place and actually become a thing in another country? I look at prioritizing the local in science communication, which is the most important aspect of science communication. And in fact, you're not doing good science communication unless you've oriented it to the local needs. Okay, so initially I thought global science communication, but actually without the local, it's meaningless. And I know of a term, and it's glocal. And it's basically putting the local into the global, and it's called globalization. Now, when I mentioned this, everyone was like, what's globalization? How can you even say that? No one will understand what you're talking about. And I agree. But it's of the utmost importance for what we're trying to achieve here. Global science communication. Something that can be globally relevant, but adapted to local sensitivities and contexts. The next module, that was of high importance, it's kind of crept down the screen, but it's okay. It's about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in science communication, shortened to JEDI. Now, there has been some papers and maybe one main report about the issues of potential of using JEDI and Star Wars and linking it together. So I have to acknowledge that in the state of being inclusive and being respectful of everybody's views and opinions. But I still use it because I think it's still useful. And the J part centers justice. The overview is that this module considers how we can focus on JEDI to deliver more inclusive and responsive science communication with and for our varied global communities, to ensure that as a global field, science communication strives to promote equitable practices and can contribute to global citizens as a force for justice in the world, okay? A force for justice, fairness, and to even the field. Now, again, I've offered it in 4 time zones, and we've had quite a lot of responses to that. To give a bit more specific information, the major overview, the vision, is to increase the use of equitable, diverse, and inclusive practices within science communication, to promote justice and increase diverse publics. That isn't a typo, because we don't like to say public, we like to say publics. And so it's diverse publics, access to science, and science in the broadest sense, not just the key main sciences, we're talking social science as well. And we're also talking about natural knowledge, people, indigenous knowledge, ideas that can enter science in different ways and how we reflect upon that and be respectful of that. So what do we cover? We cover why is JEDI important in science communication? How does diversity factor into it all? The importance of inclusive science communication, and there's a recent movement towards inclusive science communication, and I cover a bit about that as well. And how to use science communication to promote justice in the world. Because there's been some chat about how can we try and achieve justice and how does justice fit into it. So I thought I'd actually look at what justice is and how we try to achieve it, and how can science communication be used to try and achieve justice in the world, and how it kind of affects and reflects upon communities. So that is it in a nutshell.